Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar in which I will be dealing with how to deal with the anxiety of exams, and we of course will also be dealing with stress management. So let's jump into it. Who am I? I am Nicki Spies. I am a counsellor and a coach, and I've been in private practice since 2006. My practice is in the Durbanville area, but my clients are countrywide and even globally, as I have some clients in America, the UK, and in Hong Kong. So how do I go about in my work, and what's my motto? My motto is be like water, find a way. And you might wonder, where does this come from? Well, I grew up in Uppington, which is in the North Cape. Or the Northern Cape. And we lived quite close to the river, and we had irrigation days. And then we had furrows, and the water would come down, and we will have our turn to irrigate our garden. And one of the games I used to play when I was a youngster was I would take sticks and sand and rocks, and then I will try to build a little dam. And then I'll watch and look and try to see how long will it take for the water to get away, to get through that obstacle that I've built. And that was one of the greatest lessons that I learned from nature, that water always finds a way. And I believe that in my work, we also need to find a way. And this webinar is another such way that we can join you and talk about things that might be helpful to you. So today, Jade Southgate is in the support team. She will be dealing with the chat group or the chat feed that you will see on your screen. And she will also monitor the questions, which I will then be dealing with right at the end. Jade is the creative coordinator at Mazars Academy. And just by the way, for all of you that's going to say the whole duration, right at the end, we are going to share a special link that will be for a competition that you can go to and just answer, give us some feedback, and you then might be the lucky winner of a 1,000 Rand gift voucher to use on the Upskill e-learning platform. So we are looking forward to doing that as well. Jade, thanks for your support this afternoon. So let's just look at what you can expect from this session. All in all, we should be busy for about 60 minutes. If possible, I will try to come in below 60 minutes. And today, I would really like you to participate and to engage. I think we all are a bit podcast fatigued, and therefore, and it's at this time of the afternoon where energy starts to dip. So I will invite you every now and again to participate. And you will participate on the Mentimeter platform, but don't worry, you don't need to be registered. All you need to do, you will see the link in the chat line, and you can just click on that, and it will then take you to where you need to be directly to the questions that I will ask you, and I will guide you every time. Every time I'll tell you now, you can click on the link, and we will go there together. How will I use this time? Well, we have done the introductions. So next we will jump into what is stress. Thereafter, we will look at the effects of stress on mind and body, and then how to deal with that stress. And lastly, we will deal with all the questions that might come in. I would just also like to say, if we can't get to all the questions, you will also receive my email address, and I will try then to connect with you via email if you need it and try to help you with your questions. So there are many ways that we will be able to assist you afterwards. So what is stress? And it's here that I would like you to join me. You should be seeing in the chat box the link to the question. And if you can click on that, I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to respond. Your responses will be anonymous, but it will come up on the screen because we would like everyone to see what other people are feeling and thinking. So I am going over now to that, and I will see you on that side. Okay, great. So if you have to share with me and the rest of the people that are joining us right now, what is your definition with stress? If you could just start to type in there your response, and let's see what comes up. If there's anyone awake and willing to share with us the ideas. In the meantime, another question that you might want to answer later, and if you just want to jot this down, if you don't want to share on the platform at the moment, what's your relationship with stress? Because we all have a relationship with stress. Jade, do we have any feedback yet? Not yet. I'm not sure if all of you can see me. If you can just give me an indication in the chat line if you are managing. So we don't get any responses right now. I'm going to give it a few seconds more. And if we don't see people engaging, then I will just go back to the slideshow. Okay, shall we go back to the slideshow now, Jade? Or do you see any chat group? I can't see there, Jade. Could you just tell me? Let me just quickly check with Jade. Okay, so I am going back to our slideshow and we can continue there. So let us look at a more formal definition of stress. Stress is the body's reaction to any change that requires an adjustment or a response. And the moment we read that and the moment we understand that, we also notice that stress is not just about a positive or negative. Just hang on a moment. I just want to connect you with Jade because I can't see there. Sorry, Jade, I'm not sure. She asked that I must quickly go back to Mentimeter because there is a response there. It's a love-hate relationship. I think that stress is good for you in small doses, but too much of it is awful. Okay, fantastic. The inability to handle a situation, experiencing it as overbearing. Is that both our must I go down some more? Let's see. It has to do with anxiety. Yes, I agree. I also feel quite anxious when I'm stressed. Jade, do we have any more responses? It's not allowing me to go down. Must I go up? Let's go and see if there is some more. Heart palpitations, yes, that's some of the things that can happen to us when we feel a lot of stress. Frustration and anxiety, yeah. And it will seem that as if that is all our responses. I'm quickly going to run through it again. Frustration and anxiety, heart palpitations. It's a love-hate relationship. I'm putting in relationship. I hope I understand that correctly. I think that stress is good for you in small doses, but not too much. It's awful. Inability to handle situations and can be overbearing. It has to do with anxiety, feeling anxious, worrying about the uncertainty of an event. Yes, like I was worrying a bit earlier today. All right, so thank you so much for your participation. It's very, very helpful, and I hope that you also feel more connected to our whole process here. I am going back now to our slideshow. So thank you for all your definitions, short answers to what is stress and what you experience during stress. So stress is the body's reaction to any change that requires an adjustment or a response. So that immediately tells us it's not only negative stuff, even positive changes can cause stress and can cause our bodies to have to respond and to engage. So the body reacts to these changes with physical, mental, and emotional responses, and sometimes even spiritual responses. When you are stressed, what emotions do you experience? Some of you already shared that with us. Now you will again go to the chat box, click on the link provided, and that will take you to our Mentimeter platform where your responses will be shared with the rest of us. While you are busy starting to give us responses, I will also go there. And it says my site is not active here. Let me just see, where must I go? Okay, there we go. When you feel stressed, what emotions do you feel? That's our question now. And this time we're going to use a word cloud. So as you can give us 3 responses, give us 3 emotions that you experience when you're stressed, and the more people use the same word, the bigger that word will become. So that will also indicate to you that other people experience the same emotions than what you do when they feel stressed. So at the moment we have the worried, nervous, anxiety, tired. Yes, stress do drain our energy, and I will talk a little bit more about that later. We are just waiting for more responses because we have quite a few people online and just want to see what comes through. We had a poll earlier last week, and on that it was overwhelmed. That was also what was part of, and we can see how anxiety is growing on the screen. So there's a lot of people that feel anxiety when they are stressed. So there is a definite correlation between feeling stressed and anxiety. And we're going to give it a few seconds more. Remember, you can share more than once. You can share 3 times. We've got antisocial coming up, fearful, fatigued, exhausted, antisocial. That's the first one, but I'm also going to talk to that, and you will understand why that happens to you. We will be dealing with that a bit later. And I'm going to give it a few seconds more. But as you can see, when we look at the word cloud, the one emotion that is definitely very prevalent for most of us are feeling very anxious. Worried also came up now. Lack of appetite. Oh, I wish that one would happen to me when I'm stressed. Sometimes I can really stress eat. Great stuff. Thank you so much for your participation. I am going to move back now to the PowerPoint, and then we can look a bit more. Right. So emotions, this is some of the feedback that we got before during the polls that we had. These are some of the feedback that people gave us. There was a poll on Facebook as well as on Instagram. Depends how I studied for it, but usually I feel the person feels terrified. I experience fear or failure, definitely. Anxiety, we see it come up there again. And this happens because of the pressure to pass. We will be talking about that a bit later. Mixed emotions from excitement to nervousness to calmness. Great stuff. So clearly you have learned how to deal with your limbic system. Fear and doubt, stress, fear, sadness, and red. So those are some of the other responses we had on other platforms earlier this week. So let's move to what happens in the brain when we stress. Because once we understand what our body is and in our brain, when we are stressed and how those emotions to it, it helps us to manage it better. So meet Amygdala or Amygdala. This is your primitive brain, or the reptile brain, as we call it. If you look at the screen, the picture there, you will see a little orange part of the brain. It's quite small if you compare it to the rest of the brain. You will see that if we look at the rest of the brain, in comparison to that, we can imagine that that little reptile brain cannot do complex thinking. And it's one of the parts of the brain that develops first when we are in utero or when we are embryos. But don't be fooled by how the size of it. It has a massive impact on how our brain works and what happens to our bodies. So let's go and look at what is its job. The primitive brain's job is to keep you safe from any real or perceived danger. So the primitive brain is there, and it will all the time, through your 5 senses, scan your environment and look out for anything that might look as if could pose a threat to you. The moment it feels that there is an attack on you, whether it is physically, emotionally, whether it's just a perceived attack, it will jump into action. And the moment it jumps into action, what will happen? Let's have a look. It responds by activating your fight, flight, in extreme cases, freeze response. In other words, it gets your body ready to either get away from the threat or to fight the threat. And how does it do it? It goes to your limbic system and it triggers the limbic system. It tells the limbic system to start to produce adrenaline and to release adrenaline in your body. This causes the blood, lots of things then happen in the different systems in your body. Your heartbeat will fasten, the blood will go to your limbs. That's why we often get pale when we get a big fright, because everything is getting you ready to either fight or flight. And usually that whole process is about 90 seconds, depending on how you think about the threat, whether it's a real threat or a perceived threat. And after 90 seconds, usually the limbic system will start to calm down. Now, the body always tries to have homeostasis. So when we produce adrenaline, we have to counter it. And the way we counter it, the anti-stress hormone, is cortisol to counterbalance that. And it's fine for the body to have these two hormones for short periods of time in it. But if we are constantly in a state of stress and our body is constantly producing these two hormones, it can cause eventually lesions on some of our cells and even inflammations in our joints and other parts of our body. And that's why often by the end of the day, a very stressful day, you will get home or get up from behind your desk or wherever you do your work and feel as if your whole body is aching. And that's often an indication that you are not dealing very well with your stress or you're not releasing your stress. If we are also continuously in a stress state, we are busy building neuropaths that are associated with anxiety, and that can become a problem. But fortunately, great news, we have this ability, brain plasticity, but I will talk a little bit later about that. Let me just keep my eye on the timer. Right, so what happens during a stress response mode? What happens to us? Our higher function, or higher order functions and capabilities such as problem solving, reasoning, evaluating alternatives, planning, and socializing takes the backseat. And remember when people responded just now, someone said they feel quite antisocial. There's your answer. All of these functions are in this front part of our brain, in the prefrontal cortex here. This is where all of that happens. And the moment our amygdala starts to fire, the prefrontal cortex shut down. Because you really do not need to know how to do a maths problem if you actually need to get away from some real threat. So we can see that all the non-essential thinking processes, those will shut down when we become very stressed. And then we go into our fight, flight, or freeze state. So this is a very important thing to understand about what happens to us when we're in our stress mode. But here is the great equalizer, neuroplasticity. So what does this thing mean? It means that our brain has the ability to modify its connections or to rewire itself. So if you start to relate to stress in a new way, if you start to react to stress in a new way, and we can teach ourselves that, we are starting to build new neural paths. And eventually those neural paths will become the default, that you have a different relationship to stress, that you react differently to it, and that you learn to manage your own stress. And a bit later today, I will give you ways to how to do that. But let me first show you the power of a neural path. And I would like you to join in this exercise with me, please. Won't you please just cross your arms the way that you usually would cross your arms. This is the way that I cross my arms. Please do that for me the same way on your side, the way you cross your arms, not the way I cross mine. All right? Just keep it like that. Now, when did you learn to do it that way? You would probably say to me, I don't know. Who told you to cross your arms that way? You will probably say to me, no one, right? So that's just a neural path. For some reason, you started to cross your arms that way, and that became your default position. If you put your arms down and you cross them again, you will notice that you do it exactly in the same way, because that is a very established neural path. What I would like you to do now is to switch it around, cross it over the other way around. Some of you might be struggling with that, but please try. And once you have managed to cross it over the other way around, just ask yourself, what does that feel like? Okay, let go. I would love to hear from some of you what that felt like. So if you would go back to our Mentimeter platform, I'm going to go there and just see if we get some responses there. So the question here is, when you crossed your arms the other way around, what did it feel like? So not the way you usually used to cross your arms, when you had to do it the other way around. How did it feel to you? What was it like for you? I'm going to give us a few seconds to see if we get some responses. One of the responses that we often get in this situation is that it feels very uncomfortable. Some people say to me, it feels as if it's someone else's arms, or it feels very strange. There it comes up. Abnormal, unnatural, weird, strange, unfamiliar. Now, all of these feelings that you felt was awkward, unfamiliar, it's so weird, clumsy, yes, definitely uncomfortable. Great, thank you for your participation. This is lovely to get your responses. Unfamiliar, I saw abnormal, awkward, strange, abnormal, it's so weird, odd, different, feeling weird. Great stuff. I'm going to give it a few seconds more for people to respond. What's the new one that came in? What am I missing? Oh, uncomfortable and weird is getting bigger and bigger. So, and unnatural. So quite a few of you are choosing very specifically those terms to describe it. So what you felt there was the power of a neural path, and the fact that you have not built this specific neural path yet. I'm quickly going to go back to our presentation. So if you start to cross your arms over the other way around every day from now on, it will take approximately 29 days, and then that will feel as if it's also a default position for you. Also, depending on how often you do change over every day. So that is what plasticity is. When we start to do things differently, At first, it might feel different and strange and uncomfortable and weird and odd and unnatural. But, and I can't remember all the other words that you've shared with me, but the more we do it, the more we are building again that neural path. Because remember, our brain can mostly work on glucose. And because it can mostly work on glucose, it prefers to use existing paths because it's trying to save some energy. And that is why we then have to help our brain to build new neural paths when we also deal with stress, to deal and engage with stress in a different way. And this brings us to the most powerful tool of it all, self-talk. And I'm sure our illustration can already tell you something about how we engage in our self-talk. So let's go and see. What is self-talk? It is your inner voice, and it is how you talk to yourself inside the private space of your own mind. It is how you think about yourself and the stories you tell to yourself about your situation and the outcomes that you can expect. This is one of the most powerful tools that you have, but also possibly the most undermining thing that you can do to yourself, depending on how you engage with it. So let's go and have a look at that. I would like you again to click on the link, and let's go back to Mentimeter and just go one. And I would like you to share with me, what are some of the things you say to yourself about yourself when you are worried about the exam? If you can just in a sentence share that with me and the rest of our participants, we will be so grateful. What are some of the things that you say to yourself about yourself when you are stressed and when you are worried about your exams? I'm going to give us about 2 minutes. It takes a little bit longer to type a sentence, and I'm going to grab a bit of water here. Let's just see if we have any responses yet. You can't do this. You can do this. You won't pass. Sure. Let's see what else comes up. You can do this. You can't do this. Those are the 3 responses this far. I don't see any more responses. I'm going to give it a few. You didn't do enough. It sounds like quite a bit of blaming, self-blaming there, hey? Don't panic, it's fine. It's gonna be fine. Oh, that's a lovely one. Just do the best you can. I totally agree with that. You can do this. Pain is temporary. This won't last forever. It's man-made. God is greater than this. Fantastic mantras that's coming through. Haven't covered enough work. There again we hear the little nagging voice of doubt coming through. You should have paid more attention. Oh, blaming ourselves, hey? You can do this. It would seem as if I wish I started learning earlier. Yeah, sometimes we do have some regrets in our planning. Let me just see if anything else comes up. I'm quickly going to flip through them. It would seem as if we are all of that. Right, so we saw quite a few of those, and there are definitely 2 kinds of feedback that we give ourselves. So I'm quickly going to back to our self-talk. Right. What we also got online was this: you got this. Why the hell do you always put yourself in this situation of being so unprepared? Sure, very harsh there on yourself, and you are going to fail. And do you see how personal that is? You are going to fail. Not this might be a failure, but I become the failure. So when we look at self-talk, let me just go back to that one here. When we look at self-talk, we can see that there are two distinct ways we speak to ourselves. Often we speak in encouraging ways, ways that support us, ways that encourage us, ways that will calm down the limbic system. Because it's as if we forget that when we talk to ourselves, even in the silence of our heads, or maybe I must say in the very noisy part of our heads, that our primitive brain is also listening, and it's hearing, and it will be responding. So if you are blaming yourself, if you are going for yourself, if you are attacking yourself and telling yourself things like you are going to fail, you didn't do enough, you started too late, you're never going to make this, you're going to be a failure, that is a threat. And the moment you start to talk to yourself in that way, your limbic system will start to respond. And what happens when our limbic system starts to respond? This very important part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, shuts down. This is where learning takes place. This is where thinking takes place, where reasoning takes place. We can look at alternatives. We are literally shutting our brains down when we are engaging in this kind of self-talk. So we can realize that this is really not helpful. So the moment you start to talk in a way to yourself, or about the exam, or about the paper, or about the time left when you are writing, or about how you prepared, in a way that is not supporting you, you must stop yourself immediately and say, right, maybe I didn't prepare, but I did prepare. And that which I did learn, that I will recall, and that I will manage. And with that, I will do the best I can. So that we shift how we speak to ourselves, because that is extremely important. So there are some more ways that we can stress our brains. And let's look at some of those. Hydration or dehydration. 75% of the brain consists of water. So if you don't hydrate properly when you are studying or when you are busy writing your exam, your brain cannot function properly. So please make a point of to always have water with you, plain tap water, not flavored water, not water with sugar in, and definitely not anything with caffeine in, because caffeine actually dehydrates the body. So hydration, super, super important if we want our brains to work the way that it's supposed to. A reminder that all screens have blue light, and blue light has an effect on our brain. At nighttime, we're supposed to start to release the hormone melatonin. That's the hormone that makes you sleepy and helps you to fall asleep. And if you are engaged in blue light right up to when you have to fall asleep, you might struggle to fall asleep. So that's not a great idea. Now, the following is very interesting. The brain is about, I would say, a fifth in weight of an ordinary person's weight, but it consumes 20% of all the energy in the body. So the brain is our most hungry organ. So if we do not eat properly, and if we do not specifically eat food kinds that can support our brain, the brain will be under stress. Everyone says, yes, omega-3, absolutely. But it's not only in fish that we get that, or in meat, but there are many nuts, there are many vegetarian options as well. So please go and Google some brain foods, your berries, things like that, all with high oxidants. Antioxidants will help your brain. So, Dr. Google is a great one. So go and have a look and specifically Google omega-3s, because that is very important for how your brain manages also stress. Emotional stress can have a huge effect on your brain, and if you put yourself into that emotional stress by the way you talk to yourself in your mind, you are actually undermining yourself. Illness and disease, well, hopefully no one has to deal with that when they are doing exams, excuse me, and noise. If at all possible, try to keep the area in where you have to study as calm and quiet as possible. If it is impossible for you to control your environment, maybe you want to invest in some earphones or earplugs and just try to help the brain to focus on that which is at hand. So noise also can be difficult for the brain to deal with when you are trying to focus on something. For some people, it's worse than others. You will know what is, how it is for you and what you can do. So that brings me to how to deal with stress. And let's look at ways that we can relieve our stress. Our time is still fine. I would first like to start here with a whole brain approach. Now, if you could possibly imagine, and you would have probably seen some images of it, the brain has two hemispheres, a right hemisphere and a left hemisphere. So if you think of those two hemispheres and you split each one of them into two, you get 4 quadrants. And every part of the brain has very specific functions. So if we look at the different quadrants of our brains, we will see that they will be dealing, each quadrant will be dealing with specific ways of engaging with material and with the exam paper or with a difficult situation, even with our relationships. So let's look at the 4 questions that the different parts of our brain, the 4 quadrants, will ask. We have, what's the facts? How do we do this? Who is involved? And why are we doing it? So let me take this a bit further. This is the work of Dr. Kobus Neethling of the Neethling Brain Instruments. He actually got an award last year for it. His instruments are one of the top 10 instruments in the world of brain profiling. I'm also a practitioner of this. So it's very helpful to understand where our brains go and how to manage that. So when we engage with our work, it's very important to ask ourselves, what are the facts about this work? How much is it? How much time have I? What is it that I need to know about this section? So to get the facts around the preparation or even the paper when you're sitting in the paper, get the facts about it. Make sure that you understand that. And L1 is the top part of the left-hand side of the brain. L2 is the bottom part of the left-hand side of the brain. And this is where we organize, plan, and go into detail. So then the first questions were what questions. Now we go to how. How do I prepare? How does my brain prefer to work with any learning material? Do I prefer mind maps, bullet points, summaries? How does my brain prefer to engage with? Or is it maybe a combination? So ask yourself those questions. What feels best for you? When do you retain most of the information you need to retain? If you use which methods? And then stick to those, because you will know what works or don't work. And then we move to our R2, that is the right-hand side of the bottom part of our brain. And here it's all about who. Who do we allow in our space when we are preparing for exams? What's the relationships involved here? Even with myself, how do I speak to myself? Self-talk coming in here again. How do I get support? Who can give me support here? From whom do I need support when I am studying and when I'm doing my exams? When I'm in the actual exams, what must my relationship with myself be? How do I speak to myself in my mind, in my self-talk, when I'm in the exam situation? All of that can contribute in your stress levels and bringing that down. And then if you go to the top part of the right hemisphere of the brain, that is the big picture part of the brain where we zoom out, we stand back and look at the bigger picture and look at alternative ways of engaging with it. And that's the why part of our brain. Why am I engaging with this material in this way? Why not another way? Why do I consider these things? Why am I doing this specific method? So it's when we look at the bigger picture. And when we go to all 4 our quadrants in our brain, we are busy with whole brain thinking. And we engage all parts of our brain, which is then extremely helpful in our preparation, but also within our exam situation. The following I just want to share with you, not that you can go and diagnose yourself. I think all of us, when we're in exam situations, we experience some of these symptoms. and reactions. So please don't run off and think there's something horribly wrong with you. I am sharing this with you that you know it's okay to feel this. But if you are feeling this constantly for months on end, then you please need to consult with a medical doctor or someone in the mental wellness arena, so that you can just sort out how you're dealing with your stress and that it does not have this big effect on you. But some of the feelings that we might experience when we have chronic stress, like in exam time, is feeling a little bit depressed. Just feeling emotionally numb, sleep disturbances, maybe difficulty falling asleep, racing thoughts. We can get very anxious. That's when anxiety starts to kick in. Difficulty to concentrate and to learn. Struggling with motivation. Now, I always say to the students that I also work with, remember, motivation is a decision. It's not just suddenly going to come from somewhere and just cover you and suddenly you're motivated. Motivation is a decision. I decide this is what I'm going to do, and I start. And I always give the tip, when you are busy learning, doing work, when you take a break, always try to take a break when you know exactly what to do next, and when you feel very positive about the next piece of work you're going to do, because it makes it easier to go back to your studying. Difficulty to making decisions, that is when the stress is too much. And remember, earlier I said this front part, when we make our decisions, that shuts down. That's the indication of that. We can experience sometimes obsessive compulsive behaviors. That's not very general. Increased feelings of hostility, worry, and guilt. And we saw how some people speak to themselves. It's very hostile. You can't do this. We saw the way we tend to speak to ourselves, and absent-mindedness. But please, as I said, this is not to diagnose yourself, and we need to always consider the context, because if I have to say chronic stress equals absent-mindedness, then since I'm in my 50s, I am then chronically stressed all the time. So how do we deal with our stress before, during, and after our exams? Just quickly want to check the time. Let's start with the don'ts. Please do not pull an all-nighter the night before you go and write an exam. The brain only lays down and moves information from short-term memory to long-term memory. In other words, that you are able to recall it during sleep. So it's extremely important that you get good rest. Also, the brain cleans itself out while you are sleeping. It's restoring itself and its cells. So it's extremely important that you get a good night's rest, and that you do get rest. Just a reminder that an hour before 12, the rest that it provides is twice the amount than it's about 2 hours after 12. So rather go to bed a little bit earlier and get up earlier the next morning than going right through the night. More and more research are showing us that our brain's ability to work properly is directly linked to how much we move. So please do not sit for hours on end when you are studying. At least every 45 minutes to an hour, please get up and move, whether you just get up and stretch, whether it's you just go around the house or walk around your block, or if it's not safe for you to walk in your area, there's wonderful apps that you can quickly just to take a 5-minute break and do some exercises on the spot in the privacy of your home or office or wherever it is that you are doing your studying work. So it is very, very important that you keep on moving. So please don't sit for hours on end without movement. Please don't use unprescribed drugs. This is not the time to experiment, and it will not help you. Don't binge eat. Why not? Often when we stress, we go for the sugary stuff. And when we go for the sugary stuff, we then actually have spikes in our blood sugar. And the more our blood sugar goes up and down, the less your brain is able to function the way it's supposed to. And don't be a coffee pot, whether it's just coffee that you are drinking or some of these energy drinks that are loaded with caffeine and sugar. Remember, sugar as well as caffeine dehydrates the body, and thus also your brain. And your brain cannot work if it's not properly hydrated. Best drinks to have while you're studying is ordinary tap water or filtered water if you have a filter, or rooibos tea, no sugar, no milk, and rather just a slice of lemon. That way you will hydrate your system. During your preparations, here's some tips to relieve your stress. Please keep on exercising. I'm not saying that you suddenly has to become a gym bunny, but it's important that you keep on moving. So whether it's just going around the block or walking up and down your place where you live, whatever it is, but keep on moving, keep on exercising, because we release a lot of stress while we exercise. The other thing is, when we exercise, our brain releases endorphins, which helps us to feel better and to feel good. So it is a counter to all the feelings of anxiety, feeling lonely, feeling sad, feeling fearful. Exercise will most definitely help with that. Taking a nap, if you're tired, please take a nap. If you're scared you're not going to wake in time, ask someone to give you a call. Music, great to listen to some music, especially Baroque music. Baroque music is classical music, and it specifically calms down the nervous system. So you can just go and Google that. I'm sure you'll find something online to listen to. Play with a pet or something fun, something that you really enjoy doing, and that is just carefree and doesn't ever ask of you any thinking, just to be in that moment. And meditation. Now, meditation, some people think is something spiritual. Meditation basically means that you are calming your limbic system. You are quieting your mind, and you are focusing on your breathing in order that you calm down the limbic system, and that also releases stress. We also find that the brain's ability to engage with information and new information is much better after meditation than before. And there's also fantastic apps on that you can follow. I'm not going to suggest one, but please go and have a look. There's many different ones. That brings me to a very, very important thing, our breathing. Now, often when we sit and work, we tend to go more to the front. We pull our shoulders up, and what happens is that this area of our lungs become more and more restricted. And the more restricted our breathing becomes, the less oxygen we get in our body and in our brains. So it's very important to open up our lungs and the space where our lungs are. And belly breathing is one way of doing that. So you can sit or lie in a comfortable position, and then you take your two hands. The one hand you're going to put on your belly, and the other one on your chest. So the one is just under your ribs, and the other one is on your chest. And we're going to focus on the one on our belly. So how are we going to do this? We want, if you imagine this is your lung, usually we only use the top third of our lung, but we want to inflate our whole lung with air. And the way we do it is that we inhale through the nose for at least 3 counts. You hold it there, and you breathe so deeply that the hand on your belly, you try to push that out. So it's a very deep way of breathing in. Hold it for 3 counts, and then you release or exhale through the mouth. And if it's appropriate, with a shh sound. And we always emphasize our out breath. But I'm sure if you're in an exam venue and you do the shh sound, it's going to cause quite a disturbance, and people might get very worried about you. So when you're by yourself, you can practice it this way. But when you're in the company of others, you can just release the air and just try to exhale as much as possible of the air afterwards. And you repeat this 3 to 10 times. Now, again, remember the neuropaths. The moment we do this, we put the shoulders down, shoulders back, and we just focus on our breathing, we are again quieting our limbic system. And the more we practice this, the more often we do this, the more we are building that neuropath. And then eventually, with a moment you just go and sit in that position where you are going to do your belly breathing, your whole system will quiet down because you have built that neuropath. And you can do that anyway. Belly breathing and self-talk are the two tools that are available to you wherever you go, and then you can control it. You cannot control the paper, you cannot control the environment, you cannot control the noise levels maybe around you, but these two things you can control, and please take full control of that. Another tip that I can give you while now we're at managing your stress during the actual exam. Our sense, the smell sense, is one of those senses that convey or diffuse the most stress. So each one of us has a smell that really makes us feel safe and happy and content. And this smell is different for every person. Some of the smells that people have shared with me that makes them feel relaxed and just in a good space would be coffee, the smell of milk tart, citrus, the smell of the first rains on soil, the smell of lavender. I also had somewhat, mine is the smell of soil and roses. I love gardening. When I'm in my garden, I forget about everything. So often when I go into a stressful situation, I will use hand cream that's fragrant with rose, has a rose fragrance, and that helps my limbic system to settle down. Some people say sunscreen, it reminds them of summer, Christmas trees. So it can be anything. And I want you just to make a note of what is that smell that really makes you feel, life's good, because that will help your system. And you can sit there in front of that paper and just remind yourself of that smell. Let's say it's citrus. You can always rub a little bit of orange peel on your skin that you have that smell with you. So if it's a smell that you can take with you, great. Otherwise, you can just recall it, and that will help you greatly. Breath work we have spoken about, self-talk we have spoken about, and that brings me to do not catastrophize. If you're in the exam and you get a paper that has some questions that you really do not know, do not start the self-talk. Oh, this is terrible. I don't know what's going on here. I'm going to fail. I should have learned that chapter. I should have paid more attention in the class. I should have. Stop that kind of thinking. Oh, this is a disaster. I'm going to disappoint everyone around me. This is the end of my career. I'll never get to be an accountant or this or that. That will not be helping you at all. Do not catastrophize. Very few papers actually mean it's the end of the road. There's most of the time a chance to rewrite or to do something else than what you're busy with. It's not the end of the world, so don't tell yourself that. And remind yourself of the bigger picture. So often we think, no, I'm the failure. It came up earlier when someone said, I will fail. It makes me the failure. No, maybe I might fail this paper. It does not mean I'm a failure. It just means that I have to do things a bit differently next time. And there will always be a next time, that I do believe. So these are the things that you can use during the actual exam. Excuse me. So what do you usually do after you had quite a difficult exam, especially if you still have to do some more exams? So I'm going to ask you to go back to the Mentimeter app or platform. Now there you will see three options, that you can choose from. Do you go and sleep? Do you go and party? Or do you revise the exam paper? Please share with me and the rest. What do you do? We've got one person that goes definitely to sleep. What the other people, what are you saying? We are giving you some more time to quickly just click on the Mentimeter link in the chat box, and it will take you to this question. What do you usually do after a difficult exam? Not getting in responses, giving you a few seconds more, because I just don't want us to run out of time. We see so far most people just go and crash and sleep. Okay, definitely that seems to be the number one commodity after a paper, to get some rest and sleep. Okay, Thank you very much for that participation. We still see just going to sleep, no parting. That's a relief to hear. And definitely not revising the exam paper. Okay, so I thank you for your responses. I am going back to our presentation. We also had a poll and online poll earlier this week and last week, and here are some of the responses that came from that. Some people go and comfort eat, smoke. Yes, the smokers probably is desperate to get out and get a smoke. Focus on everything besides the exam, then study for everything else. Great way of doing that. As less as possible because this person feel absolutely drained, and yes, again, sleep. So we can see lots of you go and sleep afterwards. So let's look at what to do. What's great ways of debriefing after a difficult exam. Please talk to someone that you can trust, someone that has your back, that can support you, and that can listen, that won't start to tell you, you should have done this, you should have done that, and ask you a million questions, but are just able to listen. If we shuffle the letters in listen around, we also get the word silence. And if we want to really listen to someone, we have to be quiet. To exercise is a great idea, because you will release a lot of that stress through your muscles, through your body. You will start to produce endorphins, and that will help you again when you have to go back. Please avoid any substance abuse or misuse. This is not the time to dive into a party. And again, remind yourself of the greater contest. If it was a very difficult exam, often after we've slept, after we've rested and we reflect, we realize it was not that bad. And again, to rest. We are running quickly out of time. If you find that you are in crisis after a difficult paper, please consult with a professional mental wellness practitioner. If you don't have access to someone like that, please again chat to someone that can support you in this very difficult time. But don't isolate yourself. Just get the support you need. That brings me to the questions. And before I forget, I would just like to thank Jade for all her support today. And then Jade, do we have any specific questions? And if you could possibly just unmute yourself and share the questions with us, if we have any questions. Okay, great. So we don't have questions, then I'm going to move along. This webinar will be available, I think, from tomorrow onwards. You will just see here all the sources that I've used. I just want to give them recognition, so I'm just going to quickly flip through these. You can go online and have a look at that, especially the work of Paul Mashenko. I think you will be able to really enjoy. The Needling brain instruments, that was the 4 parts of the brain that I spoke about, of which I'm also a practitioner, and we can do online profiles for you if you need, and that could help you also to understand how your brain works and when you are learning. And these are just the images, the sources of the images that they might be copyright on that, and I want to give recognition to where I got that. And that brings me to the conclusion. Please also go to the Upskill Studio e-learning platform. There are wonderful blogs, free webinars like these, and courses you can join in. And also please remember, if you want to connect with me, my website is www.spiesconsulting.co.za, or my email dr.nikki@spiesconsulting.co.za. See, I left out a dot there, so it's dot.afterconsulting.co.za. I'm not sure how we're going to do the link to the feedback. It will be in the chat box now. Please click on that and complete it. And then in a few days, we will do a lucky draw of all the people that completed that. And you will be the lucky winner of 1,000 rands, the gift voucher for the Upskill platform. And there are amazing stuff and articles on there that you can use. That leaves only for me to say to you, thank you for your time. Thank you for your participation. I hope this has been helpful to you. Good luck with your exams. Take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. And we talk soon. Bye. you.